Welcome in to everybody who's come in so far. Thanks for joining. Thank you for the likes. I appreciate it. Okay, so today we are going to talk about the Dresden Files. I don't know how many of you are a big fan of the Dresden Files, but I am a huge fan of the Dresden Files. As you can see, I have Stormfront right here. I've actually got a bunch more. People are interested in learning more about the books themselves. I've been collecting the graphic novels in addition to the books, and I've pretty much got every book in the series except the last two, Peace Talks and Battleground, because I pretty much just got those on my Kindle account, so that way I could just read them easily going back and forth. I want to get the actual hardcovers. I just haven't had a chance to because unfortunately finances have been kind of tight. So I'm definitely going to be getting 12 Months when it comes out. I believe in a couple days it's going to be out in the stores. I already checked in with my local store. A bunch of the stores that I used to go to have closed, so it's been kind of hard to find an actual place to actually purchase the books. So I found one that just opened just before the holidays. So they've been really great about getting books for me. I had to get a bunch of books for my wife, so I was able to get a bunch of them. So, but I wanted to show off some of the books themselves here. So this is basically my collection that I have through Audible. I pretty much have purchased all of the books through Audible so I could listen to them because I absolutely love the way James Marsters does the audiobooks. I don't know if any of you have listened to James Marsters while you've listened to the books, but he is phenomenal at doing Harry's voice, and I actually really enjoy the way he does the other characters because he not only does Harry's voice, but he also reads for everybody else, and it's fantastic. I love listening to the way James does the books and stuff like that. I was a little disappointed that Jim Butcher did the short story of the law. Nothing against Jim. I love his writing. I love his work. But he wasn't quite getting the same, influence that James Marsters does when he reads the books. I mean, I love the way he did it, and I'm glad that he actually took part in that kind of thing. But I really prefer James Marsters doing the books. So I just find it so much more fun to listen to him. And I especially love the way he does some of the monsters, and especially when he does Toot Toot. Oh my God. I remember listening to it through so many. I mean, he first did it in Stormfront, and then he does it again in Summer Nights. I can't remember if it's been so long since I've read Full Moon. I don't think Toot Toot's in that, but there are so many great stories where he does Toot Toot. Toot Toot was especially big in like the most recent ones, like Cold Days and Battleground, where he actually comes in as a character. But if you get a chance to actually listen to the books, James Marsters does a phenomenal job. And I've been so much into the Dresden Files that I actually started plotting out the plot points of the Dresden Files books. So I literally came up with a text document where because I originally started out listening to the books, or reading the books, sorry. I actually started reading the books way back when I first started going out with my now wife. She was the one who introduced me to the books. I was a big fan of fantasy books and sci-fi and stuff like that. Like, I had read Terry Brooks' Shannara series. I had read Lord of the Rings, read The Hobbit. I had so many other series that I was reading, and of course I was a fanatical comic book fan. And high fantasy was never a huge thing that came up, but I absolutely loved it, so I always used to read comic books and books and stuff like that. And when my wife introduced me to Harry Dresden, the first thing she told me is that, because I had originally read the Harry Potter series when it first came out, but I got into it because my sisters had kind of gotten into it, so I wasn't a huge fan of it. But I really liked the way the books read. And I was starting to get disappointed in the Harry Potter books because of the whole thing between going from the books to the movies. And I was getting so upset that they weren't doing enough of the actual book in the movie. They weren't transferring enough from the book to the movie. So I was getting really turned off of Harry Potter. So I was looking for a new book series to get into. I mean, I was hardcore into Star Wars at the time, and I wanted something new to read. And my wife suggested the Dresden Files books. And I had seen a couple previews of the thing because Sci-Fi was doing their version of it. And I hadn't looked into it or anything. I had heard the advertisement stuff because I was watching sci-fi. I think at the time for like Farscape and Stargate and stuff like that. So I didn't know what it was about. I figured it was some kind of, supernatural thing, but I hadn't gotten into it. So it wasn't really on my radar at all. But then my wife says, you should check this out because it's actually set in Chicago. Click. Oh, that's an interesting point. It's a wizard. Click. Oh, Chicago, when? Modern day. Oh, click. That just started, all of a sudden, she's clicking all the things that's going to get me interested in this book series. And so she happened to have all the books available, so she handed off Stormfront to me, and I sat down. I could not stop reading Stormfront. Oh my God. I loved reading Stormfront. Everything about it was, because this is the first book of the series, so this is either going to make or break the book for me. So I started reading that book, and I loved the way it was done. I mean, the way he went into detail about how magic works, the mythical creatures, and all this stuff. And then, of course, you get, monsters and demons and all that kind of stuff. All this coming in, all right from the get-go. So all of this was reason for me to be interested in this book series. Excuse me, I need a drink. So anyway, I started off with Stormfront. Absolutely loved it. Could not put it down. She's like, okay, what's the next book? And she handed me Full Moon. And this was the one that got me immediately hooked because I am a die-hard werewolf fan. Anything that has to do with werewolves, I am all about that. I absolutely love werewolves as a cryptid, as a mythical creature, as a fantasy creature. I mean, I would love to be able to play a werewolf in D&D. I would love to roll up a character that is basically a werewolf in D&D. I would absolutely love that. I haven't had a chance to, but I would love that. So I got to read Full Moon, and I loved all of the detailing that he went into about the size of the Lugaroo and the details about the Hexenwolf and like how it was becoming like a drug and stuff like that. I was like, oh, I am so tuned into this. So I absolutely loved Full Moon. I know a lot of people do not like that book. And I understand. It's not for everybody. Not everybody gets into those things. But for me, I'm a huge werewolf fan, so that hooked me in right away. And of course, I know a lot of people say, there's werewolves in Twilight. It's like, stop right there. I have no interest in Twilight whatsoever. No thank you, not interested. The vampires in the Dresden Files series. I love that there are so many variations of vampire. I mean, of course, you've got the Red Court that you're introduced to in the very first book in Stormfront. And I loved the way how he wrote them as these bat-like monsters. Oh my God, it was so good. And if you get a chance to look in the graphic novel that I've got here in Stormfront, let me actually show you what these things look like. Let me go to one of the pages because your first interaction is with Bianca, and it's beautiful when she actually goes into her full form. Let me see if I can find it here. It's so good. It's so well done. I absolutely loved it. Okay, wait a minute. Hang on. I got it here. Oh, no, wait. That's the other one. Sorry. Let me get to this. Let's see here. Oh, wait, shoot. This is... I'm looking at volume 2, and you look at volume 1. Shoot, I don't think I have it here. Dadgummit. I didn't grab it from there. But, unfortunately, I can't show it to you there, but it looks so good. Oh, but I can show you, because I've also got Full Moon here. So, let me actually see if I can find it here because there is... Oh, God, there's so much in this to love. So, take a look at this. Okay, this is this is actual Full Moon. This is the actual graphic novel, and look at the detailing on the Lugaroo. I mean, this thing looks nasty. I mean, and this is the way Jim Butcher actually describes it in the book. It is so cool, and this thing is massive. I mean, you do not realize how big a Lugaroo is. It is a massive werewolf. I mean, we're talking an uber werewolf. I mean, we're talking not the spindly kind of one that you see in the Harry Potter books and in the movie, and it's definitely not like the ones that you see in a Werewolf in London. I mean, we're talking, these are like, the only one I could think to compare it to is if you guys saw Van Helsing, I know people aren't a big fan, but the werewolves that were done in Van Helsing, now you're talking Lugaroo. Like, they are massive. These things are at least 8-9 feet tall. Razor sharp claws, massive jowls. I mean, these things are scary. So I absolutely loved the way that they did the graphic novel, because I absolutely love the book. And the whole detailing about, the passing down of the curse, which harkens back to the original werewolf movies and stuff, the original monsters. So I absolutely loved the way they did that. And I was hooked from then on. And then the next book you get to is Grave Peril. Now, this was, for me, the heartbreaking but set your hooks in book. I mean, Grave Peril does so much. You not only get an understanding of who Harry is in the universe, but you also get the aspect of the White Council that he is a part of, and all this. I'm sorry, just to let you guys know, if you have not finished the book series, I am going to be dropping a whole lot of spoilers. So I'm going to reiterate this, that I'm going to be dropping spoilers as I'm talking about this, because I am so fanatic for this series. I absolutely love it. And okay, so in Grave Peril, as you can see on here, I've got on my sheet. So there's vampires in this. They drop about the Black Council. The Knights of the Cross are featured. And if you look at both Stormfront and Full Moon, the Black Council is also brought up in there, because this is something that comes up. I'm sorry if I'm spoiling this for a lot of you, but the Black Council starts to come into play during Proven Guilty. It's basically a little bit of a subject that comes up in the series, and it's harkens down to pretty much every book following that. But Jim Butcher touches back on it in each of his books as he moves forward. Once it is actually given a name, it starts moving forward. So you get a lot more from each one as you move forward. And that's the great thing about what Jim Butcher does, is this whole series is done in a series, but he also reintroduces everybody to everything that happens in the Dresden Files series as you're reading. So even if you started, like, say, if you look at my list here, if you started for like Blood Rights, or you started at Deadbeat or Proven Guilty, he harkens back to the other books, so you don't feel like you're lost, and you can feel like you can continue from there. Now, if you want to go back and actually read the books, you could definitely do that. Seeing as how there's so many books out now, you literally could jump from book to book to book, and you're going to get a background information about what's going on. So you can actually pick up reading anywhere in the series, and you will get all the information that you need. So, by the way, thank you to everybody who's come in so far. I'm sorry if I'm kind of rambling a little bit. I'm just so excited to get to talk about this series, and I wanted to devote an entire live just to talking about this series. Just give me 1 second. Oh, I needed to drink something. I was getting a little dried out there. So as I was saying, as you go through the series, Jim Butcher covers a lot of different details, but he also goes into the backgrounds for each book, so that you're never really lost. You come into the book basically wanting to get an intro, so you could start pretty much anywhere in the series. But if you want to like start from the beginning, go Stormfront, Full Moon, Grave Peril, Summer Night, you are definitely clear and framed to do that. But I also want to make sure that you know about that there are graphic novels. As you can see here, this is Full Moon. The very first story, and here's the thing. The Dresden Files series actually starts up before that. There's actually a graphic novel that's actually considered one of the first books in the series, and that is Welcome to the Jungle. This is the very first story of Harry Dresden that's done in graphic novel form. And this is a really cool story, in my opinion, because, again, all the books take place in Chicago, modern day Chicago. Like, he actually makes references to actual sites and locations and stuff like that. To be fair, he does screw up in a few, as anybody who has read these books knows that Jim, when he first started writing these books, he was writing them from school and when he was starting out. So he had never actually visited Chicago. So most of the information he had gotten out of maps and stuff like that and books that he had read about Chicago. He had never actually come to Chicago to actually research the city. So a lot of the stuff he references, he did get pretty close, but he doesn't get everything. But for Welcome to the Jungle, he does get some things right because he writes this in Lincoln Park Zoo. And it actually, he got some of the, I was really impressed by the way they actually, the artwork and stuff like that really does a great job of actually covering the city. So let me actually open this up and so she can actually see. So some of this, and he does introductions for the books and stuff like that. And you really get, the artwork is really fantastic. I love the way the graphic novels actually do this. It looks really cool. And each of the graphic novels was done like this because they were done by Dynamite Comics. And they are really great artists and really great guys who know what they're doing when they're drawing these guys. And it's obvious the way they wrote and drew everything in this, they really connected with Jim Butcher and worked with him on the subject matter. Because there's some really great stuff in here. The whole thing that this one takes place at is that it actually takes place at Lincoln Park Zoo. So this particular one, there's actually interactions with Harry and possessed animals and stuff like that. It's a really great story. I absolutely loved it when it first came out. So I highly recommend, if you get a chance, to not only read the books but also invest in some of the graphic novels. Some of these you can actually get through like Hoopla and stuff like that, and some online comic sources. You can actually get these. I know they're available on Amazon through their deal with Comixology, but if you want to go independent, you can go to local comic book stores and get these in comic book form. The graphic novels are available in the comic book stores, and if not, you could definitely order them through your favorite comic book store, and you can get them. And the thing that I did with a couple of them is I actually took them, and when Jim Butcher does do signings, he will sign these because he actually did authorize them, and it has his name on it, so you can get them autographed by him, and he loves that kind of stuff. So I highly recommend, if you get a chance to read these. The graphic novels are really good, and there's an entire sub area of graphic novels that are basically covering all the subject matter and stuff that's brought up in the books. So if you're, reading the books and stuff like that, you actually can get all the information that's going on in the graphic novels, and it's all canonized. So you actually, when you're reading this stuff, you can actually get all the information about the books, and everything is there. So you're not really missing anything. So just to reiterate, with the Dresden Files book series by Jim Butcher, it's right now they're on book 20. So that's the new one that's coming out, 12 months. That's the one that's coming out, I believe, sometime this month, if I'm not mistaken. I have, unfortunately, because of my work schedule, I don't get to check everything, but I've been following it up. And so book 20 comes out. It's called 12 Months, and it's basically 12 months after the last book, which was Battleground. And this is, sorry, I misspoke. This is actually book 18. Sorry, not 2018. Sorry, I screwed that one up. But this is book 18, and there's going to be 23 books total in this series, unless Jim changes his mind. But the whole thing is, we are going to get up to book 20, and that is going to be the stopping point for the series itself. And after that, there is going to be a trilogy conclusion, where basically there will be 3 books coming out. I don't know if Jim's going to write them all together and then release them one after another. Kind of similar to what they did with Deathly Hallows, I think, in Harry Potter. No, sorry. I'm thinking about something else, sorry. But basically, he's going to come out with this final trilogy, and it's going to come out, I don't know if it's going to come out one after another. Everybody theorizes about that. But basically, it's going to be novels 21 through 23 is going to be the finale. So right now, book 18 is coming out, called 12 Months. And you can basically read all of these. In addition to, and this is something that I want people to make sure that they know about, is that there are 2 anthology books that are part of this series. Let me actually load that up here so you guys can actually see it here. So the first one is this one, Side Jobs. This one came out, and it's basically an anthology of short stories. And the specific one that's in it is the very first story of Harry Dresden. It takes place before Welcome to the Jungle, before Stormfront, and is when, and this is actually referenced in the book Ghost Story as part of the series, is Harry, when he's still working, he's just got his private investigator's license. He's working for a small private investigator group, and he's basically on his own. And it's also his first interaction with Karen Murphy, who is the police officer that he works with in the series. I highly recommend reading it. It's so good. And there is a graphic novel version that's available that you can actually read. It's a really well artistic one. It's also done by Dynamite. It's really well done, and it is available digitally. You can get a hold of it. If you want the actual comic, you can get that too. You might have to go on eBay for it, because I don't know if you can actually get it in the comic book stores. But you could definitely go and do a search for it. I know there's some people out there that absolutely love going to the comic book stores and doing the site searches and stuff like that. So I highly recommend it. But there's a bunch of really great stories in Side Jobs, so I highly recommend it. The next one that is also, hang on here. I know I've got it here. Where are you? Right here. Briefcases. Now, this is a really good one because in Side Jobs actually takes place it's basically throughout the series, but there's one story that's in it, two stories in it, sorry about that. Two stories in it that actually have to do with characters that are not Harry Dresden. The first one is Backup, which is actually about Thomas Wraith, who is a white vampire from the series. Now, I'm unfortunately going to spoil this. If you guys know who Thomas is, that's great. Now, if you don't know Thomas's relationship to Harry, I'm about to spoil it, so I need you to go away for a second and then come back. Because everybody who's read the books and is up to date on the books knows that Thomas is Harry's half-brother. His mother was married and had a relationship with Thomas's father. Thomas was born. They broke apart. Harry's mom went and married Harry's dad. And then Harry was born. And unfortunately, Harry's mom dies in childbirth. I'm sorry if that's a spoiler for you guys, but I said from the beginning that if you're not ready for the spoilers, they're coming. So, basically, based off of that, the first in Side Jobs, there's a story about Thomas, and he's actually helping Harry from behind the scenes. And this book is actually referenced again in at least two other books. In addition to that, at the very end of Side Jobs, there is a story with Karen Murphy. And it's called Aftermath. And it literally takes place right after Changes, which a lot of people thought was going to be a big finale. And it was. This Changes in and of itself changed the entire layout of the series, because so many plot points get wrapped up or completely erased, so that you have to really understand where Harry has come from and how this is like a huge gut punch to him, because so much in his life actually changes. So he is not the same person after this book. There is so much that changes in Changes that really changes the character and takes him to a whole other level. So it's really a great read. And there is so much that's brought into it. So many characters come in, so many people from Harry's past life and stuff like that. It's amazing. Excuse me for a second. I had to drink some water. I highly recommend getting to this point and reading up to that point. And it's so good. And this is my personal thing when it comes to reading the Dresden Files books. When I read these books, I read them once without any audio. Like I usually just sit and read the book. But then the second read, I read it with the audiobook, and especially the unabridged version, because then it's line for line. And it really, for me, and I don't know how you guys feel about reading books and stuff like that, but for me, I actually see in my head, I see everything. I see the city. I see Harry. I see the characters. I see the magic. I see all of it in my head. It literally plays through my head like it's a movie. So when I'm reading the book, I'm watching a movie in my head. It's so wonderful for me the way I get to read books. And I found out a few years ago that people don't get that. And that's mind-blowing to me, that people don't see books as if they are a movie in your head. It's so weird for me. And I apologize if that's not something that you have, but I know that a lot of people, when they listen to the audiobooks, it makes it easier for them to contemplate it, to actually be able to get a reference for things. So that's the reason why I recommend both the book and the audiobooks, because not everybody gets the same thing out of it. But if you're into, that kind of thing, then I highly recommend it. And the next book that's I bring up is Briefcases, because Side Jobs is a bunch of short stories. Briefcases is another set of short stories that take place, but they're kind of all over the place. But in this one, you get more than just Harry Dresden. You also get stories from other members of the canon from the entire series. Because if you actually look on here, in Briefcases, there James Marsters is listed, but also so is Jim Butcher, and there's other actors who are also doing the voiceovers because they are telling the stories from other characters in the series. Like one aspect is from John Marcone, who in the book series, he is one of the major characters. John Marcone, and I'm sorry if this is a spoiler for some of you, but John Marcone is a major gangster in Chicago's mafia, and he is one of the associates that Harry absolutely hates having to work with, but he does have to work with him in order to get things done, because unfortunately a lot of stuff, him being a PI and him working with the Chicago PD, he has to interact with the seedy underground of Chicago, which includes John Marcone, who is the biggest crime lord in Chicago at the time. And to be fair, you cannot have anything happen in Chicago without a reference to the mafia, because that is literally what Chicago is known for. Historically, it is known for its mafia presence. So, of course, Jim Butcher wrote this in, which really gives me a reason to connect with this series, because when I was a teenager and I was in school, I got to see The Untouchables when it came out, and I got hooked on Chicago's historic mafia. I mean, I read all the history books and stuff like that about, Frank Nitti, Al Capone, the Valentine's Day Massacre, and all the aspects that connected with that, John Dillinger, and so much of the stuff that was involved with that happened in Chicago, because I knew that I lived in the city, so I could actually go to the locations and see where this stuff actually took place, which I thought was super cool. I mean, how often do you get to actually go to a location where a historical event happened? I mean, everybody has something like that in their hometown. You've got something, this was a spot from a historical Civil War battle, or this was a spot from the Revolutionary War, or this is where a major protest happened, or this is where a famous person came by. Everybody has that in their own town. So for me, going to sites that had anything to do with the mafia was something I could actually visit, and it was something I could actually go to and touch and stuff like that. I mean, granted, you've got museums and stuff like that in the area, but you can't actually, go to the place and realize that there was a person. When it was repaved, there's actual human blood that was spilled on this ground right underneath you, and that's something that you can't get from a museum. And I don't mean to sound gross or anything, but there's that aspect of getting to go and visit historical sites and stuff like that. So that's why I got into the mafia. So the fact that John Marcone is brought into this series and you get him as a mafia figure, that really connects with me as someone who was born and raised in Chicago, that I really connect with that aspect of the book. And from then on, and he is introduced first and foremost in Stormfront. He's one of your contacts. In fact, the story connects basically to John Marcone. You find him as a major presence in almost every one of the books. He's not in every single one, but when he comes in, he is a major plot point for Harry actually solving the crime. And that's, I think, one of the great things about this series is that when someone comes in, if you've been reading the story from the start, you automatically remember, oh, John Marcone's from this book, and this happened, and Harry got this from this. So and because it's also a plot point for the continuation of the series. Because when a character comes in, and I'm going to try and not spoil it for a lot of people, but there's a lot of characters that come up in the book series that either die off in the book, or they continue on. And you don't know who's going to die or who's going to stay in. So that's another aspect about this series, is that you don't know who's going to come back, who's going to stay in, or where these characters are going to go, because this is a series. So of course these series are going to continue on. I mean, I can almost reference Supernatural and some of the other series where you basically kind of like Star Wars or Star Trek and stuff like that, where you get characters that you find out about and they continue on, and you get to continue fanning out over these characters. You get to continue learning about them, and they continue being in the story. And for that reason, it never stops being cool. So I know I'm kind of hopping around a little bit with this, but so as I was talking with Grave Peril, I really jumped ahead with jumping to the side books, but I wanted to give you a full understanding of a lot of it. And please, if you guys missed something and there's something that you want to hear about or you want to talk about, let me know in the comments, because I'd love to reference some of this stuff for you, because I absolutely love this series. I mean, let me go into detail about this. I have not only read all the books at least 2 or 3 times, but I have also listened to the books at least 5 or 6 times per book. So I have listened from beginning to end the entire series multiple times. So I have a lot of stuff in my head that is in there specifically because I am a huge fan of this series. So if there's something you want a reference to, or you want me to fan out about it, bring it up in the comments, because I will talk about it. I will talk your ear off about it. Because here is the thing that hooked me partially on the Dresden Files from the get-go. Every single book has a Star Wars reference. Not just in a plot point. I mean, Harry is a Star Wars fan. He is also a Marvel Comics fan, which I have never really run into that with a character, that they are actually a nerd. Heck, Harry Dresden, in the books, he plays D&D. He has actual dice that he carries around with him. He is an absolute nerd. How often do you get to read a book where the main character is someone like you like that? The guy is an actual nerd. I'm a nerd. The majority of people I know are nerds. This book literally ties directly to me because I am a nerd and I live in Chicago. I am a Star Wars fan. I'm a Marvel Comics fan. This book series hooked me from the get-go, literally just from those points. And if anybody that is listening to my voice right now, you have any reference to Star Wars, Marvel, nerdom, this book series is absolutely for you. I mean, the book series comes in both book form, comic book form, audio book form. There is not a media way that you cannot get into this. Heck, you go on TikTok, you go over to Villain Support. They have actually done multiple interactions between the Dresden Files books and their videos. So if you want a good laugh, these books are definitely for it as well, because there's so much material that so many nerds can geek out over. I mean, you just do a search for Dresden Files on TikTok or YouTube or any of the major sources, and you are going to find nerds geeking out about the Dresden Files series. And the most important part about it is that it has not finished yet, which is the reason why we haven't seen an animated series or a movie yet. They tried to do a TV series and it crashed after a season, primarily because they did not stick to the books. They took the subject matter of the Dresden Files and took it and ran with it and completely rewrote the series. They did bring in some plot points, but the majority of the series has nothing to do with the books. So many fans didn't get into it. Thank you, Wicked Kitty. Yes, absolutely, a nerdy wizard. It's absolutely the reason why I got into this series. Literally, the main character is a nerd. And he's not only a nerd, but he's the nerd that all of us want to be. I mean, that's the great thing about the Dresden Files series, is that Harry Dresden is a nerd who has basically the greatest gift that any nerd could absolutely have. He is a wizard who has actual power. And he actually references Spider-Man. With great power comes great responsibility. And Harry literally lives that statement. I mean, Jim Butcher references that so often. Not to actually, copyright thing, but it actually is referenced in there because it's actually a part of who his character is. And you cannot not love that aspect, especially if you're a nerd like me. I absolutely love that, and it's so great to actually read a story where you actually can feel like you're part of it. Like, a lot of the decisions that Harry has to make is a lot of the decisions that everybody makes in their own lives. And that's, I think, one of the really great aspects about this book series, is that you get not only a great story, you actually feel like the decisions the character is making is the kind of decisions that you and I will have to make on a daily basis. So for that reason, the book series is great just for that. Now, another aspect I want to bring in for the book series is the comedy aspect that this series has. And, whoops, I just knocked over my books. Sorry about that. Because I've got a lot of the books in here. Like the book that I'm re-listening to right now is this one, White Knight. This is the one that takes place in the Dresden Files series, and I'm right at one of the battle scenes. I'm listening to it on my phone through Audible with my phone while I'm driving in the car and stuff like that. And I will actually put this up while I'm doing work and stuff like that. Like if I'm sitting at work or something like that and there's a lull, or I'm working in a room, me being a media specialist, I'm constantly setting stuff up. I will actually put one of the audiobooks on through the loudspeakers as a way to testing sound and stuff like that. So I'll plug it in and I'll start on the speakers and I'll start adjusting sound, because it's also a speaking voice. So that gives me an option to actually adjust the dials so that way everything sounds good as if someone's speaking through it. Now granted, it sounds different, from speaking from an audio and speaking from, voice to microphone. There's an obvious difference. But for my purposes of just testing the sound out to make sure it's all set and good, and then I'll go back in and readjust it once the event actually starts. But it gives me a good way to get things started. Putting on music is obviously great for adjusting like bass and stuff like that. But when actually getting a speaking voice, which is a lot of the stuff I do, having an audiobook is a great way to do it. So I'm always have an audiobook standing by, and it's regularly Jim Butcher. So that really is part of the reason why I really love this series, is because I can listen to these books anytime. And for the longest time, I would be listening to it and I would start to skip through the book to get to my favorite parts, because there are some parts in these books, and I should really reference this, that are so great with Jim's writing, because he knows how to do the snark. He knows how to get those little jibs in, and really he turns Harry into the best smartass, and I absolutely love that. The comedy in this series is so well done. In my personal opinion, the absolute funniest book is Blood Rights. And I've actually listened to Blood Rights multiple times just because, in my opinion, it is one of the funniest of the books in the series. Granted, there are some really funny scenes in almost every one of the books, but Blood Rights is absolutely, in my opinion, the funniest book in the whole series. There are so many one-liners, so many funny situations, just the stuff that happens in it, you cannot help but laugh at them. And I love that aspect about this series, is that you will be reading the book and you will get to a one-liner, and especially if you're a first-time reader, you will get hit with this and you will absolutely bust a gut. Or at least you will laugh out loud and not even realize you were laughing out loud. Like you'll be basically sitting somewhere and you really go, and you like all of a sudden you just realize that everybody's looking at you. It's like, sorry. Which I actually did that a few times. I'd be in the library or in a coffee shop or something like that, and a thing would hit me so funny, and I didn't even realize that, and I actually went, I was like, oh crap. And I don't know about you guys, but I used to ride the L. That's the elevated train in Chicago when I was going to and from work. And when you just suddenly burst out in a laugh, everybody just automatically goes, and it's like, oh geez, sorry. It's like, you don't even realize you're doing it. But that's the great thing about these books, is they are not only, you get the action, you get the comedy, you get the drama, you get the sadness. There is it's literally an emotional roller coaster when you're reading these books. I have yet to read one of these books where I either don't tear up, don't laugh, or don't feel some kind of pain inside, or don't get furious at the injustice that Harry has to write. I mean, there's so much greatness about these books that is so good. And so for where I was at, so I'm talking about Blood Rights is the funniest. The one that I think is the most popular is Deadbeat. For so many reasons, it is the best one, because it's literally the very first book that brings up necromancy and really gets into the aspect of somebody actually dying, and the really darkness aspect. In addition to that, it is one of the only books, besides Grave Peril, that has to do with a holiday. And this is the key thing here, is because Harry Dresden, his birthday is Halloween. He was born on October 31st. So every year, his birthday happens on Halloween. So each of the books that take place on Halloween is a pretty much gold standard for anybody who's a fan, is the book you listen to or read on Halloween. So there are right now 3 books specifically for that. You've got Grave Peril, which takes place on Halloween, also on his birthday. Deadbeat, Halloween, also on his birthday. And Cold Days, birthday, also on Halloween. And each one is so well done and really gives you a reason to read these for Halloween. I mean, it's really great stuff. Excuse me for a second. I gotta take a drink. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm talking so much, and I usually don't get. This is basically an aspect for me. Just so you are all aware, the reason why I talk in the way I do is because I am also neurodivergent. So when I get kind of into a rambling mode, I start really rambling. So I will kind of jump around a little bit on story points. But the aspect that really gets me is that it's a thing with me that I actually can reference things so much more if I read them or listen to them multiple times. So for me, reading these books is kind of like the equivalent of watching a movie over and over again just so I can memorize it. Like, let me give you an example of this. I am such a huge Star Wars fan, and this is not pump it up. It may sound like it, but I'm not trying to do that. I'm trying to make sure you understand what I'm talking about. I'm such a big Star Wars fan that I have watched the original trilogy. I'm not talking the ones that have been done. The original videotapes. I actually own them, and I have watched them religiously since I was 5 years old. Let me give you the aspect of that. I've been a fan of Star Wars since I was literally in diapers. So, to that end, I would watch Star Wars on a regular basis. Even when I was playing with my toys as a kid, I learned how to put tapes into the VHS, start/play, and be able to listen to them. So I had Star Wars the majority of the time. I had that in the VHS player and playing in the background. And when my favorite parts would come up, I would stop playing with my toys and I'd watch the movie. And that's just who I am. The same thing with Jim Butcher's Dresden Files series. When I read these books and I listen to the audiobooks and I read the graphic novels, I go back and I reread them multiple times. So that way I not only can read them, but when I want to have a conversation with someone, I can pull these right back to the surface and I am right there and being able to talk about something. Not really to correct someone if they're wrong. That's not something I really like to do. I will include that if I'm on a chat or something on Reddit or Facebook or something like that, which I am part of a lot of those chat groups, because I really love this series and I really like to chat with other people who are into this series as much as I am. And it's difficult to be able to have that conversation in person because the chances of running into a Dresden Files fan while you're at a bookstore or something like that, and not everybody wants to have that kind of conversation, So being able to get to sit down and talk with someone about the Dresden Files is a wonderful thing, which is the reason why I'm doing this live right now, and because I want to hear back from you guys. I mean, I would love to actually invite people in. If you would like to join this chat, I would love to talk to someone in person about the Dresden Files. If there's an aspect that you want to talk about, that you want to hear me talk about, I love this series so much to the point that I would love to have a group to sit down and talk to, because it's such a great series. There is so much to reference to it. I mean, I know that there are fans out there of Game of Thrones, Harry Potter, and Star Wars, and, Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit, that are like die-hard fans who have read the books cover to cover, know them inside out and backwards, know the lore, have read all of the books in the series, know everything about them, have seen the movies, have seen the TV series, have seen the animated versions, and they know the stuff inside out and backwards. So that even if you talk to someone, they will not only know what you're talking about, but they'll actually be able to reference it and be like, oh yeah, did you love that scene? Oh, that was so awesome. I'm the same way. I love talking about this stuff. I love referencing it. And it's the reason why I really got into the series is because of all the different things that are involved with it. So, and that's part of the reason why I came up with this plot pattern that I have here, is that there are so many different things that happen in each book. And I actually started using this as a way to figure out what might be coming up in the books. I'd start to see the pattern. Because every book has a different pattern of things that are brought up. So, like, you'll notice here that I have for Full Moon, Summer Night, Proven Guilty, is fairies are involved. Either the White Court, or sorry, not the White Court. Either the Winter Court or the Summer Court. There's two aspects of fairies. There's the winter and the summer, and then in between, there's the wild fae, which I've actually referenced this with some of the people on TikTok. I'll actually bring it up just to see if they're into the Dresden Files. Not everybody gets it, but there's the two aspects. So, for example, in Full Moon, we get the aspect of the fairies because of them being involved in what's going on. I'm sorry, not Full Moon, in Stormfront, because one of the things that happened, and actually, geez, I just realized that I actually didn't have that included there. Let me actually copy and paste that back up here, because I completely forgot that Harry's fairy godmother is actually a character and is actually a major part of Stormfront. I completely forgot about that. Oh, wait. Yeah. And actually, no, is she? I actually don't think she is. I might have actually just gotten that wrong. Oh, I might have to actually go back and read Stormfront for that reference. Okay. Oh, that's what it was. It was Grave Peril. Sorry. I literally I'm going over a lot of this stuff in my head as I'm talking with you about it. Basically because I really love talking about this stuff and making reference to it. So I completely forgot about that. Harry does have a fairy godmother. She's associated with the Winter Court of Fairies. It's I guess another way to refer to them as the Fae is I believe how the fairy courts, or however you wish to reference it. But the main protagonist that Harry first becomes involved with is his fairy godmother, and she really comes into play in Grave Peril because she is hunting Harry down. So there's an aspect, I could go into detail about that, but I kind of don't want to spoil it. But her name is the Leandashi. I believe I pronounced that right. And she goes by Leah to Harry, and she is literally his fairy godmother. She is a fairy, and his mother, before he was born, asked her to be his guardian and basically to educate him. And that's what she was for the longest time. And it's referenced in the books about how the fairies actually work in aspects of deals. Like basically, if you make a deal with a fairy, it's basically for life. You literally get hooked in. And Harry made a deal with his fairy godmother in order to preserve his life. And she, in Grave Peril, went to collect. And he was able to get out of it so that she couldn't basically take him for what he was worth. But then it comes back in the next book, Summer Night, where he basically has to make an additional deal with the fairies because they need him to be their representative. And there's a couple things that I actually forgot to include in Summer Night. I don't know why I took them out, but I need to put them back in here. In addition to Summer Night, there's also the wizards that come into play in there because of the involvement of both the Winter Court and the Summer Court. You literally, this Summer Night becomes, after Grave Peril, where you get the understanding of not only the fairies, but also the Knights of the Cross and the vampire courts, as well as the other wizards of the world. You really get an aspect of how big this world really is, which is the reason why Grave Peril is such a great book. And if you can get through Stormfront and Full Moon, you will not be disappointed in Grave Peril because it gets really dark but it's also really good. The story, I'm not going to lie to you, the story does drag at a few points, and that's because the first 3 books are really the world building. Like, basically, Jim Butcher is explaining how the world works so that you can understand what's going on in the world. Now, if you can't get through Stormfront and you can't get through Full Moon, and by the time you get to Great Peril, you have no interest in the series, I'd say drop it. Don't continue with it. If you read Stormfront and Full Moon, get to Great Peril, and you're not hooked after that, then it's not the book series for you. And there's nothing wrong with that. Not everybody gets into things. I've never put anybody down for not liking the Dresden Files books, but if I hear that someone is looking for a book series and they're looking for something that's fantasy, fantastical, and stuff like that, but they're not into the Lord of the Rings and they're not really into Harry Potter, I say that the Dresden Files books is the books for them. Because when you read the Harry Potter books, they're very kiddie. They're very, it's kids. It's kids in school. Harry Dresden and the Dresden Files is not a kiddie book in any way, shape, or form. It is definitely adult. Heck, in Stormfront, there is a scene where literally a monster is trying to eat Harry. He's standing there butt naked, and his, at the time, girlfriend is literally trying to get it on with him while a monster is attacking them. If you cannot see this scene in your head and realize, what the... then, yeah, that's exactly what it's like. And that premise continues on through the series, where Harry gets into these situations where they are really uncomfortable, but he has to figure his way out of the situation. It's not always the choice that you would make, but you really feel an aspect of, oh wow, what would I do in this situation? Because you really have no idea. And the really funny thing is that the majority of the time, the reason Harry gets into these situations is that he's broke. He doesn't have any money. He's trying to basically survive. He has a little apartment that he lives in, and he has his detective agency, and that's it. That is his primary source of income. If he does not take cases that suck, he does not get to pay for anything. That's the majority of the time. He was able to get in good with the police department, so they at least will pay him for consultant work, which is the majority of his work. He's barely able to afford his apartment. It's a basement apartment in downtown Chicago. If anybody who has lived in Chicago, it is not a cheap city to live in, much less run a business in. I mean, I don't know what his office fees must have been to open an office and maintain it. I mean, the amount of work he must have gotten that he had to put up with, I can't even imagine some of the cases he must have had to deal with when he first started out. That's one of the reasons why I'm really looking forward to when a animated series finally gets done, is I'm hoping we will finally get those stories. Because those are the stories that we don't really get. Like one of the short stories that's in Briefcases, or not Briefcases, Side Jobs, is where Harry is literally sitting down with his consultant, Bob the Skull. Yes, I just said Bob the Skull. For any of you who are a fan of the Dresden Files, you know exactly who I'm talking about. But Bob the Skull is not an actual person. It is a spirit that lives inside a human skull. And trust me, it is one of the greatest interactions you will get to read in this series, is because it is so dadgum funny. Oh, geez, for some reason, I had a little issue there with my thing. Sorry about that. I don't know if my audio just cut out or what, but for some reason I had a glitch there. But anyway, Bob the Skull is one of the focal comedy bits in the Dresden Files series. You will not be disappointed in the way Bob just goes off on things in the world. Because the thing is that Bob isn't really a person, so he has no moral compass whatsoever. He's a spirit, not really born of a mother and father. He is literally a spirit being. So he doesn't have a moral compass. So he doesn't talk about things in the way that you and I would be able to talk about things. Not to mention, he is a raunchy little pervert. I mean, he literally, Harry pays him by giving him porn novels. That is how the guy, as the spirit, stays with him and works with him, is because he gets porn from Harry. I love that aspect about him. He is such a creepy little guy, and he basically works for Harry because he gets porn. Oh man, and that's the reason why he is so funny. And the sarcasm that we get from Bob the Skull in this series is one of the great comedy points of the books. There's a reason why it's so much fun to read him. And that interaction in Side Jobs is basically Harry trying to come up with an advertisement for a want ad, basically for the newspaper. Because when this book first came out, newspapers were still a big thing. That's one of the aspects about Stormfront and Full Moon that I know might turn off some people, because they're basically set during the early 2000s. So there's a lot of aspects that are there that some people will reference, some people will understand, but they won't all find it interesting. So that's the reason why a lot of people don't get past the first two books, is because they're kind of dated. But now that the series is where it is, it's a lot more modern. There's a lot more stuff that's involved, so it's more believable that it actually could happen. And the funny thing is that the way Jim Butcher has been writing the Dresden Files series, it does kind of tie into our modern life. Like a lot of the stuff that's been happening in the United States and around the world, it feels like it's actually happening in the books. I mean, there are some things that are actually referenced in the Dresden Files books that has to do with real life. So you actually feels like, wow, is this actually happening? Now, I know it actually is, and we all know it's a work of fiction. But still, there's that aspect of, the same thing. You get the same thing from reading, or watching the movies of, Spider-Man and Marvel in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. That you get that aspect that it could be happening in modern day. It's that aspect of, you watch, John Wick, and you feel like it could be modern day. Like it's actually happening right now. You're just behind the scenes. Same thing with the Jim Butcher books. You get that aspect that it feels real enough that it actually could be happening. So you really get that connection to it. And that's one of the things that I really liked about Grave Peril, is that that's the book that really pushes you over the edge. You really feel like you're in the world now. That it's not just, some little thing. You really feel like you've gotten into the world. You're moving in. You're finding out what's going on and what's really happening in the world. And you also get that aspect. This is Harry's first real fall, where he falls flat on his face. He feels like he's a failure. Even though he wins, he still feels like a failure. And then the next book, Summer Night, you get in contact with Harry where he's at one of the lowest points of his life. He feels like absolute crap. I mean, he hasn't been doing his job. He hasn't been doing things. He's depressed. He's, absolutely miserable. And you really feel for him. You really understand, especially if you read Grave Peril. I mean, you could go into Summer Night and you would get the idea that he's in a bad state. But if you actually read Grave Peril before you go into Summer Night, you feel so bad for him, because you realize what he lost and the pain he's going through. And the great thing is that he has friends that are coming around and trying to, pick him back up after he's fallen on his face. But it's difficult for them. And the really interesting thing is that he has to not only bring himself back up, but he also has to talk to his friends who are also going through major losses and stuff like that. Like, I think really in Summer Night, the relationship between Harry Dresden and Karen Murphy really comes together, where Karen really is seeing things from Harry's aspect, and she's really starting to see him not just as something she has to deal with, but a friend that she can actually rely on. And that's something that you don't get from Stormfront and Full Moon. I mean, when you're reading those books, you really think that Karen almost could be an enemy. I mean, she starts out the books as a friend, but as the plot goes on, you don't know where they're going to land. And that's why I really love the way Summer Night was written, is you feel like Jim has gotten into the flow. He knows now how to write the book. He knows how to get you hooked in. So I remember when I finished reading Cold Days, out of all the books I would go back and read, Summer Night was the one that I would jump on, because I loved the way some of the stuff was written. And I especially loved the way James Marsters read that book, because I would go back and listen to Summer Night like 5 or 6 times. Granted, I wouldn't listen to the whole thing, but if I was sitting at home and I didn't have anything to watch on TV and I didn't want to play a video game, I'd pull out Summer Night. I'd turn on James Marsters and I'd be reading that book. Because, man, there was that. When I was at a dark time in my life, that book really got me through some hard times, because I connected with Harry in that aspect that he was going through some really crappy stuff. And I knew I could connect with him on that level. So that really made the book so much better for me. So that's the reason why Summer Night is a great book to, if you get a chance to read it. And also, there is an aspect to Summer Night where you go from I want to reference it. You go from the horror movie aspect to the Lord of the Rings aspect, where you're no longer hidden away behind things, or there's no longer walls in the way to prevent the outside world from seeing it. You have now gone into the fantasy realm, which is called in the Dresden Files series, it's called the Never Never, which is basically the world between worlds for a Star Wars reference. It's that in-between place where the fairies live, but humans don't want to go anywhere near this place. It's where the fairies live, where the monsters live, where everything lives that likes to come into the real world and drag you back into it and have you for dinner. Literally as a side order. So that's part of the reason why I really liked Summer Night, because it really brings you into that alternate world where there's unicorns, there's monsters, there's goblins, there's giant spiders, there's giant bees, there's all these different things that get brought in Summer Night. And it really gets you that whole aspect of, wow, this is like a cross between Lord of the Rings and Narnia. I mean, you're getting so many different things in here. You're getting griffins, you're getting giant bats, you're getting... I can't even come into details. You're getting werewolves, you're getting vampires, you're getting every single thing. You're getting ghouls, you're getting skeletons, you're getting so many different monsters. If there had been a 3-headed Hydra, I would have been in paradise. But unfortunately, they didn't bring that in. But there were other aspects. They brought in trolls, they brought in ogres, they brought in everything. You really got the whole aspect about it. Plus, not to mention, what the Fae look like, the pointy ears, the cat-like eyes. I mean, they go into all this kind of detail about what they actually look like, and it's so good. Excuse me. But I absolutely love the way that particular one was written. Excuse me, I had to take a drink. And then by the end of Summer Night, you feel like Harry has finally come back from his depression. He finally is in a good place, and they literally end the night with him coming in to hang out with his friends. So it really feels good. And then the next book, Death Masks. This is where you really, in my opinion, you feel like for the very first time, besides some of the other ones, where Harry might not come through this. Because he's got so many bad guys coming in after him. I mean, literally, the title of the book is Death Masks. So you literally feel like, okay, death is involved here. And there is a lot that happens in this book that it's hard not to be interested in it. And it's also our first introduction to the Denarians, which are, I'm going to spoil a little bit here, but it's one of my favorite bad guys that we get in this series, is the Denarians, which are the counter to the Knights of the Cross. Now, I'm going to go into a little bit detail here with these characters because, in my opinion, they are quintessential to the series. Because the Knights of the Cross, the main contact that Harry has with them is Michael Carpenter. He is an actual knight, like a paladin-style knight, like D&D kind of thing, where he is holding a holy sword of the church. Now, this is a religious aspect, so some people might get a little turned off by this, but really, it's not that kind of thing. Because that's another reason why this series is so good to me. You not only have the fantastical fairies and all that kind of stuff, monsters and stuff like that, but you also get angels, demons, hell, heaven, all that kind of stuff also mixed into it. The church is a major player in this. And that takes it to a whole other level when you realize that there are 2 or 3 types of GODs. Now, I'm not talking like the almighty kind of thing. There are the lesser GODs. So I'm going to say it. Gods, what people refer to as gods. Not the capital G-O-D, the lower G-O-D. So like aspects of Zeus, aspect of Odin, aspect of Shiva. The different gods of that kind of thing that I'm talking about. The low-level gods. Not the big-time almighty God creator of the universe. Though he is referenced as a player. Though it's more his agents, his angels. Those are the ones who are also involved. But there are the human versions, which are the Knights of the Cross. 3 men carrying 3 swords that are basically the servants of the Almighty and his works. So not to the point of like forgiving and handing out communion, stuff like that. No. We're talking wet works here, people. We're talking, these are the guys that basically, when demons come onto the earthly plane, these are the guys that basically cut their heads off. So nice little example there, right there. Like, these are the guys that basically would be working with the Winchester brothers. Like, if they needed an extra hand from like the church, an actual church representative, they'd be working with the Knights of the Cross. Which, if you're a fan of the Supernatural series and you wanted some funny references, if you haven't read the Dresden Files books, basically Michael Carpenter is as straight-laced and as square as you could possibly get when you come to a person who's going to church. And he quotes the Bible like every time he interacts with these guys. It's so good. And I absolutely love that. And there's two other knights that are brought up into this, and they both carry holy swords. Now, the reason why they're called the Knights of the Cross is because in each of these swords is an actual nail from the crucifixion, as in Jesus, as in nailed to the cross. The nails that were used to actually nail him to that cross are in the swords, which makes them holy swords, which means anything of demonic reference or pure evil is going to be hurt by these things. So now, based on that information, the Denarians, they are basically the opposite half. And the reference is they're called Denarians because anybody who is a Christian and has gone to church, specifically Roman Catholic and stuff like that, they know the story of how Jesus was turned over to, I'm trying to remember the proper word, the Pharisees or whatever, and they were brought before the Romans. Basically, one of Jesus' disciples betrayed Jesus, and he was paid with 30 silver denarians. These coins, because of what was used, are endowed with one of the fallen angels of hell. And each one of them has, in order for one of those demons or fallen angels, in order for them to exert their power, they have to be picked up by a mortal. And that person has to hold on to the coin, and they then literally become the embodiment of that fallen angel. So, in that aspect, there are a lot of references to scripture and stuff like that that actually bring that into the light. And you get, if anybody who has any religious reference or stuff like that, this kind of stuff is pretty cool. And it brings in that whole other genre of, you got to think about it like the fantasy aspect or the legends that are brought up in the church. You know, that kind of stuff that's actually referenced in the books and the Bible, but now we've got it mixed with fantasy. So in that aspect, it's really cool. And, you know, the saints and stuff like that are referenced and stuff like that. It's really interesting. And me being a Irish Catholic who was raised in the church, this was another aspect that really got me hooked onto it. So it really gave me something to reference with that. So, which is part of the reason why this book series is so good, because you not only get the aspect that you're reading about a wizard working in Chicago and he's solving crimes, solving murders and all this kind of stuff, but he's also working with not only werewolves and he's fighting vampires, but he's also working with knights who work for the church who are hunting demons. And the Denarians are basically demons that are basically endowed in a silver coin that if a human picks them up, that demon now possesses them and they now are servants of the Denarians. And Harry has his first interaction with them in Death Masks, which is the fifth book in the series. And this particular one is really good because we get introduced to Nicodemus Archleon, and he becomes one of Harry's major enemies in the series because he specifically knows about Harry, knows his history to the point that he can actually use him and, possibly take him as one of the Denarians. And that aspect then comes into play later in the books. I'm not going to spoil it for you, but if you guys want more details, please comment and let me know if you guys want more information on this. And I know we're past an hour on this. If any of you would be interested in hearing more about this, please tap on your screen and let me know you guys are interested in this, because I really love talking about this stuff, and I want to continue on, and I'd really love some interaction. I mean, I'm going to keep going, but I would love to get some interaction. If there's a particular thing you would like to hear or talk about, I would love to know. So please reach out, say something. So the next book is Blood Rights, which is, in my opinion, the funniest book in this entire series, and has one of my favorite lines. And this is where I'm going to get a little bit for you guys, as I'm actually going to play for you one of my favorite scenes from this book. It's voiced by James Marsters, and it's featuring Harry talking to Thomas the vampire. He's from the White Court, and you just got to hear this interaction.
A surge of relief made me feel a little dizzy, and I slid bonelessly back into the beetle. "Allow me to reiterate," Thomas panted a minute later. "What the hell was that?" I settled down onto the seat, breathing hard. I buckled up and checked that the puppies and their box were both intact. They were, and I closed my eyes with a sigh. "Shun," I said. "Chinese spirit creatures, demons, shapeshifters." "Christ, Dresden, you almost got me killed." "Don't be a baby, you're fine." Thomas frowned at me. "You at least could have told me." "I did tell you," I said. "I told you at Max that I'd give you a ride home, but that I had to run an errand first." Thomas scowled. "An errand is getting a tank of gas or picking up a carton of milk or something. It is not getting chased by flying purple pyromaniac gorillas hurling incendiary poo. Next time, take the L."
Oh my God. I'm sorry, but that is one of my absolute favorite lines from the entire book series. I mean, just for reference about how funny this book is, the very first line of the book is, "The building was on fire and it wasn't my fault." That line alone, that is literally the first sentence. "The building was on fire, it wasn't my fault." That sets the precedence for the entire, because it's so absurd yet so funny at the same time. And then you get this interaction. Not to mention, there's an entire chase scene that happens before this where it references Raiders of the Lost Ark. So if I had to recommend anybody to start this series, a lot of people will recommend Deadbeat. Me personally, I say Blood Rights is the better one to introduce, because you get this whole interaction between Thomas and Harry that just sets the precedent for the entire book from here on out, and also sets you up for some really, really funny scenes and comedy bits in Deadbeat, which is the next book. Just again, this is the reason why this series gets so good. The majority of the time, if I'm like going back and I'm reading books, I will read Summer Night and then I will jump right over to Blood Rights because it's one of my favorites. If I want, a reference to the Denarians and stuff like that, I will go back to Death Mass and read that one again. But I absolutely love just going to my favorite books in the series. And I really enjoy getting to sit with the book and listening to it with James Marsters reading it, because he does such a great job. He alters his voice just enough so that you realize he's talking from a different character. And he is so good at that, which you really get that from him when if you've ever watched Buffy the Vampire Slayer, or you've seen him in other movies and stuff like that. He is really good about adjusting his voice to play a character, which is part of the reason why I really love the way James Marsters does the books, because he really makes you think that he's a different person when he's reading the lines for somebody else. Which really shows his commitment to reading these books. Is he even the female characters, he alters his voice so that you really do get the inflections that a woman is talking, and which is the primary reason why I really like James Marsters. And you could tell he's classically trained because he's also a huge fan of Shakespeare. And one of his favorites, and the reason why I know this is because my wife, who introduced me to this book series, got to actually go and meet him at a Comic-Con. And one of her favorite stories to tell, and it's one of my favorites to actually hear, is when she actually interacted with him. And she literally asked him what was the easiest way to get kids interested in Shakespeare. And he, without even missing a beat, he says, Make them realize that Lady Macbeth is not a bitch. No, I think I said that wrong. But anyway, the whole point is to not is that he's a huge Shakespeare fan. Which, if you've actually had a chance to look at James Marsters' work for audio stuff, like audiobooks and stuff like that, he has done so much with Shakespeare. It's not even funny. And there are a lot of aspects about the Dresden Files that have to do with references to Shakespeare. I mean, heck, one of my favorite graphic novels that I've gotten to read actually features Puck from A Midsummer's Night Dream. He's an actual character in the Dresden Files series. So just that alone is a reason to be interested in this. If you have any interest in Shakespeare in any way, shape, or form, this series makes reference to so many aspects of Shakespeare and his stories and stuff like that, and folklore. So just for that alone is a reason to definitely give this series a chance, because there's so much more involved in the Dresden Files than just the the crime aspect, crime solving and that kind of thing. There's so much more besides that. And that's part of the reason why I really love the way James Marsters does the books, is he does a really good job of getting this stuff transferred over to you so that you actually have a reason to be interested in it. And it's really cool. And that's part of the reason why I really love the Dresden Files series, is because of that. And so for that reason, Deadbeat and Blood Rights are really well done, because James really gets you into these characters. And when you're reading the books, and if you want to listen to the books while you're reading, you can do that. I personally love doing that. It's one of my favorite things to do, is to be reading the Dresden Files books while listening to James Marsters read them. And it's really good. To that point, I should point out that the original version of Ghost Story, when it first came out, James Marsters didn't actually do the audiobook for that. Apparently, they couldn't get him on the schedule and stuff like that. And so the person that did it, it wasn't bad. There's actually, you can actually get that copy of the audiobook that's done by somebody else. My wife personally doesn't like that version because she prefers the way James does it. And to be perfectly honest, I love the way he did it. In fact, some of my TikToks, I have actually referenced some of his works. And I'm trying to create a video of that particular line that I just played from Blood Rights, the whole interaction between Thomas and Harry. I want to figure out how to do that. I'm still learning how to do that. I did a lot of graphics arts when I was in college, but I had to drop it when I was looking for work and stuff like that. So and since Adobe changed their whole thing, I have to get back into doing that kind of stuff. But there's a graphic thing I want to create with that. I believe it's called kinetic typography, and I'm trying to do that particular voiceover scene of that with those kinds of things. I've started getting the graphics and stuff together. It's just since Adobe changed their thing about using their software, I've been trying to find an alternate version, so I'm working on that. But anyway, back to the books. So the next book in the series after Blood Rights, Blood Rights is the next book in the series. And the whole thing is that it's, my opinion, is the funniest book. The reason why it's the funniest book is because Thomas and Harry really get into a kind of back and forth character situation. And also Karen Murphy becomes a major factor in this book. I mean, she was in Death Masks, but not so much. But in Blood Rights, she's really involved in the story. Like, she's like the go-to, because it's not just one type of vampire that's referenced in this. It's several vampires are involved in this. Because, and I should reference this, that one of the major plot points of Grave Peril, which was the third book in the series, is it's the beginning of the war between the Wizards White Council, which is basically the major wizards group. Kind of like, how in Lord of the Rings and the Hobbit, there's the wizards. There's Gandalf, and there's Sauron, and he references in the, not Sauron, Saruman, and he also references in The Hobbit about the two blue wizards. This is that kind of thing, except it's worldwide. It's not just in like the United States. It's the United States, it's India, it's Europe, it's Africa, Asia, all over the world, that there are wizards everywhere, and they're not only as strong as Harry Dresden, there are some that are twice as powerful. And these are the ones that are the head of the White Council. And they're the strongest wizards in the world. And one of them, in my opinion, just in my opinion, is my absolute favorite of the senior council. And the reason why he's my favorite is because of the injustice that has been done, and his name is Listens to Wind. He is an actual Native American shaman. And I wish I could express how much I love his character. It's so great. You're introduced to him in Summer Night, and you really get that aspect of a man who is wise, powerful, but also hurting. Because not only, and his story is so sad, in my opinion, because anybody who's from the United States knows that the history of Native Americans in this country has been horrific. Anybody who knows anything about history and the way the United States government treated the Native people of the United States in North America is horrific. And the thing you get about Listens to Wind is that his tribe is extinct. It has been wiped out. He has no family left. As far as canonically, as Jim Butcher has given us, we don't know any family or anybody left of Listens to Wind. So he is basically the last surviving member of a Native American tribe. And he is on the Senior Council of Wizards. And he has been on that council since the time of the European invasion of the United States. The council existed back then, which brings up the interesting aspect. Why didn't they assist the Indians? There is a whole thing there. And I don't know how many others are interested in that, but that's something that I, in the back of my mind, have been interested in. And I'm going to tell you right now, anybody who has read this series, and you know the book I'm talking about, Turncoat, you know exactly what I'm talking about in that book where something happens in there. Me personally, I absolutely love the scene that Listens to Wind is involved in, because you really get the aspect of just how powerful this guy is and what his capabilities are. So that's part of the reason why I really liked what happens in Grave Peril, and it references out the war between the White Council and the vampires, references out from Grave Peril all the way through the book series until you get to a certain point. I'm not going to tell you which one, because I don't want to spoil it for those. For those of you who have read the series or are reading the series, I'm sure you guys know what comes up. So I'm not going to get into the details on that, but I might get into it. If you stick around and you ask me for it, I may spoil it. 'Cause I don't know how many of you who are listening right now. Thank you for all of you that have come in. I'm sorry I'm not referencing you directly. I'm kind of just gushing all of this stuff out because I'm such a fan of this series, and I'm kind of just talking randomly. So I'm sorry if I'm not identifying each of you individually. Thank you for coming in. Thank you for stopping by. I appreciate it so much, you coming in and listening. If you get a chance to give me some taps on the screen, some hearts, I'd really appreciate it. I'm not asking for any gifts or anything like that. I would absolutely love if I could get just some taps on the screen. I'd really appreciate that. Okay, so back to the books. We're on Blood Rights still. The aspect is that, and it's brought up in Great Peril, that there are multiple courts of vampires. There's the Red Court, there's the White Court, there's the Black Court, and there's the Jade Court. The Jade Court we know nothing about. They are referenced in name only. We don't know anything about them, other than they are a court of vampires. The Black Court are basically the equivalent of Dracula. These are your run-of-the-mill Hollywood vampires, but they're real. So anything that hurts them in the movies, like Dracula and stuff like that, so holy water, garlic, sunlight, that kind of stuff, crucifixes, true faith, that's the kind of stuff that those vampires are affected by. But these guys are also not the run-of-the-mill vampires. They are not the romantic, handsome, beautiful things. These guys are basically living corpses. They don't have fangs. They have yellow teeth that literally rip into your skin. They get a hold of you, you are walking dead, basically. You're a walking corpse. You don't look pretty. Your body is falling apart around you until you basically look like hairless cats. So, yeah, these guys are nasty. And then you have the white vampires, the White Court. These are the vampires, and more details will come in the later books, but I'm just going to cover this right now. White Court vampires are basically, they're the equivalent of succubi, where basically they suck the life force out of you. That is how they are vampires. They basically suck, not exactly your soul, but basically your living life force out of you. And it's usually done through sex and that aspect. There are variants of the different houses of the White Court where some use fear, some use pain, but the ones that we have the most reference to are the White Court is the ones that use lust and sex in order to gain control of a person. And here's the thing. Once they get a taste of you, you get addicted to that, and they basically can keep feeding off you and feeding off you and feeding off you until they kill you. Sometimes they will kill you in a first feeding. They have sex with you, you're dead. It's literally kind of a Black Widow kind of situation. But there are others that basically they don't want to kill you right away. They like feeding off you, so they're going to keep you around. Not to mention that they use this also to manipulate powers that be. So, lawmakers, politicians, court members, juries, corporations, you name it. So the White Court, they are the ones who go in and they start manipulating the environment through basically seduction and sex. And then they also blackmail and stuff like that. They are not the ones that get into fisticuffs with other monsters. They're the ones that they don't like fisticuffs. They like using cat's paws. So basically they will make somebody else do something for them so they don't get their hands dirty, which is an aspect of the mafia, which is the reason why a lot of the White Court are involved with the mafia, which is a really cool aspect about that. And Blood Whites, we really get the two main vampires that we run into in that is the White Court and the Black Court. And man, do they not like each other. That's the other thing about the courts of vampires. The Red Court is one of the more dominant ones. They're pretty much spread all over the world. The Black Court's not so much because since Bram Stoker put out the Dracula book, people know how to kill the Black Court vampires, so there's not as many around. Or they don't make themselves known. Which there's a great story about the Black Court vampires in Side Jobs in the anthology book. So if you get a chance, it happens on Valentine's Day, which is another reason why it's a good story. And I would highly recommend reading that one. That's so good. The Side Jobs and Briefcases books are so good. I highly recommend those ones because they're short stories, they're quick to get through, and they technically happen in the same world, but there's not as much of a reference to the others. So you literally could read them, and it's a nice introduction to the Dresden Files series, but it doesn't give too much away. Some of it gives away, but some of it doesn't. So anyway, Blood Rights really gets into the Black and White Court vampires, and it's comedy gold. So I highly recommend that one. The next one, Deadbeat, is by far the fan favorite because it has to do with Halloween, has to do with zombies, and the greatest inclusion of a Chicago staple of anything else. And that's the only fully assembled T-Rex, Sue the T-Rex. I'm not going to get into details, but let me just say she plays a quintessential part in the story. Not to mention, we also have introductions to the wardens of the White Council, which are basically, these are the soldiers of the Wizard Council, where these guys use combat magic, like it's basically pulling out guns and going into a John Woo style shoot 'em out. So these guys are really cool, and you really get that aspect of the kind of magic these guys are able to do. I mean, you get that from Harry Dresden, but this is like multiple guys cutting loose against bad guys, and it's really cool. And I understand that the way I'm talking about this makes it like I'm watching a movie. This is how it portrays for me in my head. When I read these books, when I listen to them, I'm seeing this as a movie in my head. So I'm talking about this as if it's a movie because that's the way I see it. Now, I know a lot of you, when you read books and stuff like that, it doesn't happen for you that way. But for me, it does. When I read books, I see a movie in my head. It actually interacts with me in that way. So that when I literally am reading, I see the drama. I see the action. I see the grotesqueness of horror, of battlefields, all that kind of stuff. I see it in my head. When they go into intricate details about somebody getting knifed or shot, I see it as if it's actually happening. And that is the reason why I love these books, because it literally, when I'm reading these, it feels like I'm watching a mini-series on TV or watching a movie, because it's so vivid. And that's part of the reasons why this series is so good. Deadbeat is a great example of that, because it is written so well that it really does feel like you're watching a movie. The next one in the series is Proven Guilty, which this one I think is really good for anybody that has had any connection with an aspect of not only nerddom convention-wise, because it's also Harry actually works in an actual convention, like the kind of comic book conventions and stuff like that, where it actually takes place at one here in Chicago, which Chicago is a great hoster of conventions. So it's part of the reason why this book really resonated with me, because I go to Comic Cons and stuff like that. It's one of my favorite things to do when the summer comes on, is I get to go to these things, go to the panels, you get to see other people, you get to get a hold of the great fan stuff. I mean, it's so much fun. So I actually get to read about a convention from a written aspect of another nerd. So it's really cool in that aspect. And that's part of the reason why I really liked it. Now, it's also our first introduction to Molly Carpenter, who becomes a major character from Proven Guilty on. I won't go into details about that. If you want to hear details, please comment. Let me know that you want to hear more details. Let me know if there's something particular you want to hear about, because I would love to talk about it. But moving forward after that, we get into White Knight, which is the next book in the series that I'm currently reading right now. I've already read it multiple times, but I love listening to it because there's this whole new variant of action that I think is going to be a major thing in 12 months when it comes out. A lot of people don't get into it this much, and the reason why is because there's some subject matter that's happening in 12 months that is a source of a lot of talking right now, because so many people think they know where the story's going to go because of everything that happened between Peace Talks and Battleground, which there was a lot that happened between these two books. And to be absolutely fair, some people were not happy with the way Battleground ended. And I personally am one of them, but not because of what it means for the series, but because of how I feel about Harry's character. And because of what happened, I'm not going to go, I don't want to reveal it because I'm a big fan, but somebody really close to Harry ends up dying. I'm not going to give the details of who, but it completely changes how we feel about Harry, because now things in his life are changing again. So it really gets into a whole aspect about the changes and trials that Harry now has to go through. And that's the thing with each book, is he has to go through some really rigorous trials, and it really changes who he is. And White Knight is a real aspect about that, because he has to come into his own, not only as a wizard, but also just a man trying to live his life. And it really comes into play there. So for that reason, White Knight is one of the groundbreaking kind of stories of the series, because you really get a strong sense of the kind of person Harry really is and who he wants to be moving forward. Like, he doesn't want to be the guy that's constantly, trying to pick things up, as they go. He really is now becoming part of the world. He's putting himself out there. He's going out and actually accomplishing things and becoming part of it. And that's the real change that happens during White Knight. Now, the next book in the series is a quintessential book, Small Favor, where this is involved, where you have the Denarians, you have the fairies, you have John Marcone, you have the Knights of the Cross, and you really get that whole aspect of there's so much more going on in this book. And it has to do with the entire overall story of the series, which makes it so interesting from my point of view. And I absolutely love it. And the other thing that goes into it is the way the book series from here continues on. Is you really now, if you haven't read the previous books, the story kind of gets a little confusing because now Jim's going into less detail about what's been happening, unless it becomes a major plot point. But if you haven't read the previous books, you're not going to get a lot of the references he comes to. So that's part of the reason why this is where the story changes. I mean, by now, if you've started reading the series and you've really gotten into it, you're already hooked in. You're already dead set on staying into this series, which really makes it all the more interesting to get involved with, because now the story really shifts over to something more intense. And then in Small Favor, you basically have all this interaction with all these major characters, and it's a real changeover from some of the previous books. And then this is the really big one, is Turncoat. This is basically the one where Harry basically has, it's kind of like almost like Midnight Run in an aspect. If you haven't seen that movie, you probably won't get the reference. It's basically Harry has to defend someone who's on the lam. He isn't on the lam himself, but he has to protect someone who's on the lam. I'm not going to reveal who because it's big. It's huge. And you really get a kind of aspect of a whodunit in this one. A lot of the books actually have this aspect of whodunit in the story because Jim's really good about hiding some of the final details that aren't revealed, because that's the really aspect about the Dresden Files books, is that it is a mystery book. As much as it is an action book, as much as it is a fantasy book, it is also a whodunit murder mystery book. There's always a corpse, there's always somebody that Harry is trying to track down, or there's somebody missing. It's one of those aspects. And that's one of the reasons why this book is so good, is because it's also a mystery. So you've got the fantasy, you've got the drama, you've got the action, and you've got the mystery. All these mixed into one book. Not to mention all the one-liners and the comedy. So there are so many things to get into this book series and enjoy, to really get into these things. It's so much fun. And it's one of the reasons why I got into the series in the first place. And this is something I need to bring up because also in the briefcases, and I'm bringing this up because this is something that's really cool in my opinion, because I want to talk about this real quick before we get into changes, which is really where things take a turn. It's one of my favorite references for the Dresden Files, and it's this. Bigfoot. As in the Sasquatch, as in the Abominable Snowman. Jim Butcher brings in Bigfoot as part of the universe, which you don't get that very often in a sci-fi fantasy kind of thing. I mean, you get it in some fantasy, but I haven't really interacted with it that much. And that's the reason why I really like this. And let me show you this here, because I really like this aspect that they go into with this, is that you find out there's a lot more history involved with Sasquatch than people realize. And I really love the way they artistically draw and make them look. And the other aspect is that not only are these the Sasquatch from legend and stuff like that, but not only that, they also have magic. And not only that, they are also connected to the Native American cultures. So that was part of the reason why I really got into it, is because it references stuff that honestly I had not even considered when thinking about Bigfoot. I mean, seriously, has any of you ever thought that Bigfoot would be associated with the Native American tribes? Because to be perfectly honest, it had not even occurred to me. I mean, that was a thing that was like completely out of my brain, that was even an interactive aspect. But because of Jim Butcher and the Dresden Files, I finally made reference to it. And the aspect about that he gets into in these stories is amazing. Now, I would recommend if you want to find this Bigfoot Dresden File graphic novel, I would highly recommend because artistically it's beautiful. In briefcases, they also cover. There's 3 stories that involve him. And the Bigfoot actually has a name. His name is River Shoulders, as Harry refers to him. But he's I'm trying to remember here. Okay, I actually have to look it up. So hang on one second here, because I'm trying to remember this. Hang on a second. I got it here. Hang on a second. I'm trying to find it here. He actually has his name in here. Where is it? I know it's here. Sorry, I had to actually read a bit so I could see it. Here it is. I am called strength of a river in his shoulders. It's basically, the whole scene is that River Shoulders has contacted Harry through the Forestry Service at one of the reservations. And basically used to pay for him to actually set up the appointment. And he basically needs Harry to help him with his son. I'm going to leave it right there for you to figure that out on your own. If any of you are a fan of the series, then you're going to know exactly what I'm talking about with this. But these stories are some of my favorites. And originally they were put out in a book called Working for Bigfoot. But I like the way they have taken it now, and I love the graphic novel where they go into it, and there's so many different aspects about it that are so good in my opinion. So I highly recommend it. The graphic novel is great. If you want to read it in briefcases, you can. Working for Bigfoot is its own book. You can actually get it. I believe it's on Amazon and stuff like that. But if you want to go to your local bookstore and get it, I highly recommend it. You could honestly just read that, and you would get so much out of it because is that whole aspect of, actually knowing what a Sasquatch, Bigfoot is, Yeti, whatever you want to call it. But just that whole thing is just so good. I really love the way River Shoulders comes across. And the great thing is he comes back and he becomes a character in the actual novel series. That's what my personal view of it is that a character goes from being in a side story or a side arc and then comes into the main canon of the series, which is so good. Okay, so now we're at Changes, which in my opinion is just like it says. Changes is the real part of the story where the entire series literally changes. Everything changes from here on out because Harry's life is thrown into absolute turmoil. It changes over completely, and sorry, I had to read something. And his life is thrown into absolute upheaval, and he has to change who he is, and his entire life has to change. And it's really sad in that aspect is that everything that you have gotten used to in the series now alters. I'm not going to go into details about it, but you really feel for his character because he has to go through something that he's never gone through before. And to be fair, a lot of men and women will go through this kind of change in their life. And the way it's written, it's from a more, emergency kind of aspect, but you really get the fact that this is hard for Harry. You really feel for the character because he is going through something that when I went through it, it was a nightmare. And for him, it's a double nightmare because you have to basically change who you are as a person. You have to realize, oh my God, it's not about me anymore. You stop thinking as it's all about me. because it's no longer about you. And that's, I think, one of the biggest parts of that story is that. And it's really good. I for those of you who are still going in the Dresden Files series and haven't gotten all the way there, it's so good. I highly recommend that part, because when you get to that book, it's going to change the entire series for you. The next book in the series is Ghost Story. It's literally that. It is a ghost story from Harry's perspective. I'm not going to go into how he gets there, but basically he is a spirit. So, leave that for what it is. The next book in the series is Cold Days. Now this, for a long time, was one of my favorites because I love the way this book is written. It's so good. It's a time crunch kind of thing. Like, Harry is literally given a time frame. He has to accomplish this by this time. If it doesn't happen, the world gets destroyed. It's literally one of those kinds of situations where Harry has to figure out what's going on, how to fix it, and he's on the clock. Excuse me, I need a bigger drink. Hang on a second. Oh, man. Oh, I needed that. Oh. So, for Cold Days, he basically has to get everything that needs to get done. He has to get it done as soon as possible. And he's dealing with the worst of the worst monsters. They're called outsiders. And you'll find out about them as you go through the series, but these are big, bad MFers. I mean, these guys know how to throw down, and they are the worst to possibly go through. But there's the thing that Harry has that nobody else has. I'm not going to go into it, but it's so good. The battle scene from Cold Days is amazing. I mean, again, I'm saying that because I actually see it in my head when I read these books. It is phenomenal. What happens, what Harry has to do, and the most embarrassing thing happens to him. Oh, let's just put it this way. The real final battle, he don't got no clothes on. And it does not really go well for him. But it's so good. And I honestly, just thinking about it, there are parts of Cold Days that are really funny. It's not as funny as some of the others, but there are some really funny parts in it. The next book in the series is Skin Game. And this is basically where, for the very first time, you get a completely different view of the series, because it's no longer just a murder mystery kind of thing. It is now a heist story, which is the first time this has really happened. It's now heist. There, to be fair, in Death Masks, you do get an aspect of heistness, but not really. And it's not. There is a heist involved, but Harry's not directly involved in the heist per se. So it's technically not a heist movie. It's almost like, I don't know how to describe it. It's basically an aftermath of a heist. Whereas Skin Game is an actual heist. He is actually part of a crew that has to break in somewhere and get something and get out without getting caught. And for me, being a Star Wars fan, there is a section of this particular book that you cannot not love because of what happens in this. It's so good. And I highly recommend, if you haven't had a chance to read this far ahead, I highly recommend it because it's so good. It's such a great book, in my opinion. It's one of the best in the series, in my opinion. Once you get to a certain aspect about it, it's really fun. So I highly recommend Skin Game out of most of them. Honestly, I recommend the entire series. But if you are just looking to jump to like the best parts of the series, then I would definitely say Skin Game is one of my top favorites. I mean, I go back and I listen to it multiple times. And the really fun aspect is you get the Skin Game, for reference of my sheet that goes through all the different aspects. For Skin Game, you not only have the nickel heads, which is what Harry calls them, the narrates, they're nickel heads. You also have an introduction of, you have John and Marcone involved, but also, which is an interesting thing, is that you have the Knights of the Cross as well, because anytime there's the Narians, you have the Knights of the Cross, but you have a brand new knight. And I'm not going to say who, but there's also the aspect of, you know how I talked about River Shoulders, the Bigfoot? Well, now you get a view of the other side of the coin, where a Bigfoot is a more majestic, more sturdy, more, peaceful creature. Now you find the other side of that, which is basically a Bigfoot that has no interest in being nice, has only the interest in killing every human it sees. So, I'll just tell you, this guy is scary. I mean, this is the thing that you worry about when you go out in the woods by yourself at night, and all of a sudden you hear a thud, and you think to yourself, oh my God, and it feels like something is about to grab around you and squeeze you until your eyes pop out. Yeah, that's what this guy puts to you. You're like, this is the aspect I talk about when I read the book and I get scared reading the book. This is one of those things that actually was like, holy shnikes, what the heck is this thing? It's like, I really start getting those images of me walking through the woods, and all of a sudden this thing picks me up and says, I'm going to drink your blood like a soda pop. Yikes! No, thank you! So, yeah. So, Skin Game is such a great book in the series, and it really gets good. Now, the next two books, you cannot talk about them without realizing that they were originally supposed to be one book. Okay? Peace Talks and Battleground, originally when Jim Butcher was working on them, they were planned to be one single book. They were not supposed to be separate. They were supposed to be one book. But the book got so long that it was going to be too big for them to print as one book. It was going to be like, you compare the thickness, not quite War and Peace, but pretty darn thick. Excuse me. So, for that reason, he decided to split it up. So the first part of Peace Talks is basically, it is an actual peace talks between nations of the world. So you've got, you got the vampire courts, you've got the fairy courts, you've got, deities and monsters and stuff like that. And they're all coming together because they want, to talk things over. Because something major changed. Is if you look on my sheet here, you notice that the Red Court vampires, they're no longer a factor. So now there's a new red called the Fomor. They come in and they are now a major power player, and in between Peace Talks and Battlegrounds, and they are also referenced in briefcases. A lot more detail is given to the Fomor, as they are a major bad nation. And this Peace Talks and Battleground is basically a full-blown war series between the two. You really get the aspect that these guys are coming in. They're coming to Chicago to wage war. It is not just a simple, they're coming to take over. They are coming in to wipe out every single human being in the entire city, and they have no qualms about how they do it. And it's not something that's done in the back alleys or something like that. No, they are coming in invasion force style. Like, we're talking D-Day invasion force style, where they come in not only as just the human-sized monsters, we're talking... I'm going to go ahead and say it. Jotuns. Anybody who knows any reference to Thor, you know what I'm talking about. We're talking ice giants, okay? The real things. They're coming in and they're stomping the human race to bits. Chicago is literally getting leveled. It is so amazing. And I'm saying it's amazing because, again, I'm reading these books and I am seeing it as a movie in my head. So when I read these words, it comes through to me like a movie. So when I hear about these battle scenes, and like you've got wizards throwing magic around, you've got giants landing with clubs and armor, you've got, berserker warriors from Valhalla that are getting into combat and using C4 on their bodies, and you've got vampires coming out of the woodwork, you've got monsters coming up out of the sewers, you've got massive armies of elves and wizards and all this stuff, and they're fighting it out in Chicago, right where the Bean is, like literal downtown Chicago. They're having an all-out battle, and the way it is written is beautiful. I personally feel like I'm literally watching a movie when I read these. When I listen to James Marston read them, I am in tears. I am screaming for joy. I feel everything. It's amazing. I love the way it's written. And that's one of the reasons why this series is one of my favorites, because I get so into it. It's literally like Star Wars for me. I mean, you watch these movies, you get into the characters, you get into the story, the whole mythos behind it. You really get into it. It's so good. So I cannot stress this enough, that this series, in my opinion, more than Game of Thrones, more than Harry Potter, not as much as Lord of the Rings, but it is one of the best book series for you to get into. If you are in any way into fantasy or, that kind of stuff, I highly recommend it. It's so good. And I'm trying to think of other things to bring in about it. But there's so many great things about it, because you not only have the regular book series, like if you just want to read the books, you can read the books. But if you're looking for something that's going to get you into an entirely new genre, like an entirely new series to follow, because you've got books, you've got graphic novels, you've got short story form, there's even games about the Dresden Files series. There is a Dresden Files role-playing game that is available right now. If you wanted to make it part of the series or just in the world, you can play it. There is a collectible card game of the Dresden Files. You can go out to your local game store and you can get the Dresden Files card game and actually play through some of the books. You actually can play it like that, kind of like Magic the Gathering. It's actually available. You can do that if you want to. This book series is just so good and so widespread. And again, there is a TV series. It's not related to the books. It's kind of its own thing. If you want to get started with that and see where it takes you, go right ahead. You can actually see that. I think it's on Hulu or one of the streaming services right now. I'm pretty sure a lot of the episodes are probably on YouTube. But you can definitely watch it that way if you want to. And again, if you don't want to hold the books or read the books, you can just listen to the audiobooks, because the audiobooks are done by James Marsters, and he's amazing at the way he does these books. So I highly recommend just doing it that way. At like in Chicago, they have the Field Museum of Natural History, and they have a whole section just on stones and stuff like that, like jewels, but also like actual geodes and stuff like that. And I see that stuff and I think, I wonder if that's what they're talking about. So I will actually incorporate that into my head while I'm reading this stuff. And that's how I kind of, it's weird. Well, not exactly, but it's basically how I see things. Sorry, I had my mouth full. Yeah, it's really cool. Alrighty. Unfortunately, I have got to call it a night. I've been on here for 3 hours. I thank you all for coming in. I really appreciate it. I was really hoping to co-host with somebody tonight, but it's fine. It's no big deal. Hopefully I'll be able to go through this again sometime. If you guys would like to hear me talk about other things, or if you guys want me to talk about more about the Dresden Files, shoot me a message and let me know. I really enjoyed talking about this kind of stuff, and I wouldn't mind doing it again. So thanks all for coming out, and I will see you all next time.